And we go. I'm also going to start recording on this. So, hi. The introduction is always different, so you don't need to go through that. Welcome, listeners. Welcome to this edition and this week's episode. And today I have an amazing guest with me, someone I'm very excited to talk about and with a lot of things with and about, around, and everything to do with him and more. I have the amazing Professor Joe. I won't say much. I'll just let him introduce himself. So first of all, thank you for doing this. Thank you for being here with me and allowing to do this podcast. It means a lot to me. And you're a very famous person on this campus, I should say. And but for those who don't know, could you just give us a small introduction about yourself, your career, what you do at YU, and how you became involved with the school?
Okay, well, thank you for that introduction. I was actually looking for the person you were talking about, but okay, we'll go with that. So my name is Joseph Panzarella, and everybody who knows me at Yeshiva knows I say it sounds like Cinderella, so you don't forget it. So it's Joseph Panzarella. What he asked a few questions. What's my passion? How did I get started? I guess we'll go with how I got started. So I've been was in the advertising industry for many years, about 25 years, working on various different brands, products. I got introduced to data and data analytics early in my career. I actually started before the internet began, so there's no such thing as the internet.
Wow.
Yes, it's a long time ago. So it was we had Excel, we had running water, we had food, we had all those things. But that's how I started. And I ended up at an agency that did it primarily for clients. And I was there for about 25 years, worked on various different brands you would know of, etc. And then about 12 years ago, I was in a client meeting and with someone else, another person in my organization. And after the meeting was over, he said, Joe, you're kind of like a goody two shoes, nice guy. College students would really like walk all over you. You'd be a great college professor. And he had been teaching at Columbia and NYU. He's like, they need people at NYU to teach data analytics. Why don't you go over and interview? I can recommend you. And they need people. So I said, all right, let me go give it a shot. I had nothing to lose. I figured they'd say no. And I went there and they were really desperate for people. And they just asked me a couple of questions and checked my pulse and said, here's the syllabus and there you go. And honestly, if that first class, the students were horrible, like they weren't nice to me, I would not be in this profession at all. But they were so nice and so sweet, from different cultures, different countries. They were patient with me. I think my first semester there were 14 classes. I brought in 5 guest speakers because I didn't know how to fill the time. And I was your typical teacher where I was like, my back was to the students and I'm reading off the slides on the screen. It wasn't very exciting, believe me, but they gave me good reviews and it was positive. So I kept doing it. The next semester they gave me another appointment and then I started doing 2 appointments and 2 classes, etc. And about 7 or 8 years ago, I started getting serious about, wow, can I do this for a living? I mean, I like advertising and stuff like that, but can I do this for a living? And I kept putting my name out there, just emailing. One thing about this, and one thing about an adjunct versus just being like an employee, like if you adjunct at a school, all of a sudden you can just contact other schools and say, hey, I'm an adjunct already. You need any help? And it's all, there's no commitment there. And eventually found its way to someone here at Yeshiva University. She brought me in to be a guest speaker, which was great. And then she hired me to teach a class. And then she moved on to another part of the school. And they, long story short, they offered me her role, full-time role as the program director. And I've been in this role since June of 2020, which was during the pandemic. So I interviewed over Zoom. I started the class. Everything was all Zoom. So it was an interesting time. But I've been doing it now for 5 years. And it's been a great career change much later in life. So.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting background from advertising. I'll get into that later on in the podcast because I have some advertising space myself and background myself, and I want to ask a bit about that. And then transitioning all the way to school. We'll get into all that. But let's start with the grassroots. Were you born in New York? Are you a New Yorker, born and raised? Who is Joe outside the work, outside the
Well, if you couldn't tell from my accent, yes, I'm New York, born and bred from Queens originally.
Oh,
So
nice.
not Spider-Man, but I am Queens, and did move to Long Island. But when I say Long Island, which is not Queens, not part of the city, only about 4 or 5 miles away from where I grew up. So I'm still in the sort of the same neighborhood, same area, and I've been actually this month, November of 2024, marks the 30th year I've been commuting to Manhattan on the train. Can you imagine? So MTA owes me one, and I owe them one. It's a symbiotic relationship. But yeah, so from the area, grew up in the area, obviously. Outside of school, I like to exercise. I did one time in my life, just once. I'll never do it again. I ran the New York City Marathon. That was my athletic accomplishment, and then I proceeded to be sick for the next 2 weeks after that. So at the end of that, and I still run, I still exercise. So that's kind of cool. Obviously I have children, and that takes up good time of your life. And, it's I like to say to some people, I didn't raise just dogs and cats or fish. It's, people. And that's a challenge. And everyone, if you want to, has that challenge, has that opportunity. So that's interesting. And I also, last few years, I've been, with my kids getting older, they're in college. I was bored on the weekends. I didn't just want to sit and vegetate. I've been coaching youth soccer and youth basketball of not my own children. I helped coach when they were younger. And it's a lot of fun because I don't have to worry about the politics and drama of having to play all the kids. Like, if you're not good, you're just not good, And if the parents yell at me, well, you coach then, So, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I like giving back to the community like that.
Wow, a man of many, many traits. I like the marathon bit. I have never tried to run a marathon, so
I wouldn't recommend it. I still do like 3 miles and 5 miles here and there, but not 26.2.
Oh yeah, and the good thing about New York, and as someone who has just come to the place, is you do a lot of walking and leg related exercises without knowing.
Mhm.
Like back home, I would walk like 3 kilometers and I'm dead. Like I'm out, my legs are dead for like the next few days. But here I walk some blocks, a typical Saturday, you're just out and about in town. And you go back home and you check and it's like you did 8 kilometers, which is like, whoa, I didn't even know I had that in me. So I guess I think a marathon would be easier here. I don't know. I would try, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, you have a family, you coach soccer and all these things. I want to get into.
Well, I know the difference between a red card and a yellow card.
That's all.
That's about what I know for soccer. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So I would like to talk about identity as a person who has transcended all these different and done so many great things. You've been in advertising. You're now in teaching. You're running programs. Has Joe's identity as the way you see yourself, do you think it's consistent through all those? How do you see that as a person going through all these experiences, all these roles that you take up?
Yeah, no, really good question. I think it happens for everybody. And I always like to tell people, especially like I'm older now and many people I meet are much younger than me, be careful taking advice from someone a generation older than you. Be careful because what I experienced at your age is not necessarily what you're experiencing at your age. And I'll just give a stupid example. Like, to me, student debt was like $3,000 and now it's not, right? Let's just leave it at that. So it's a much different experience. So I always cautious people like giving any kind of life advice from me on that. But I would say what's evolved of me over the years, and I think I would hope that happens to everybody. You go from being a taker or absorbing information only to then absorbing and then giving it out, playing it forward, right? So I went from being a student to an employee, lower level, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden you get into those management levels. Now you got to give back and mentor. You get into teaching, you're giving back and mentor. So I think everyone evolves and transitions if they want to, from taking to giving as you go through your career and stuff like that.
I like that. I'd never actually thought about it like that. It goes from taking to now giving. And I think that's an element of just getting older. I found myself I ran my own company for about 14 years. Mm-hmm. And at the start, of course, you're just learning, all this. But then when I started hiring people, you have this like insatiable need to just like tell them and give them and try and help them. And like, it stops being about, oh, you're here to do things for me. It's like, I want you to leave this place a better person, a better, even though you go into your life, I want you to remember this experience. I guess that's kind of in the same light of mentoring and giving and all these things.
I think so. I think you remember when people weren't nice to you or didn't do things nice to you, and so when you get back, hopefully you reverse that and say, I'm not going to be treated. I don't want to be treated the way that person treated me. I will treat somebody else a little different. So I think that gets into it also.
Oh yeah, that's deep. That's deep. Let's switch gears a bit and get to the advertising space. Why you always did it just, oh, I've graduated and I have nothing to do, let's go into advertising, or it was like, I want to specifically get into advertising? Is that what you did in college? Something you've always liked since like preschool and all this?
Yeah. So no, I don't think anyone grows up wanting to be an advertising person. Like I want to be in the NBA or an NFL player. I don't think it works like that. So when I was in high school, no direction, no idea what I was doing, just going by the flow, eating, playing sports, whatever. Right. And then when I went to college, I was a liberal studies degree or a liberal arts degree, which basically is I have no idea what I want to do with my life, but I have to get out in 4 years. I got to get some sort of focus. But along the way, halfway through my college, I had to do this liberal arts degree, right? But you had to sort of like pick 3 areas of focus. And one of the areas was like media arts. Like I had a couple of classes, like I learned television and film or whatever. And I was like, all right, I'll put that part of my liberal arts. This I had the media arts, and even though it wasn't because I was doing politics and economics, other classes, etc. But I did this media arts, and I like that most. And so when I graduated from undergrad, this was back in 1991, unfortunately, but the economy wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. And so I said to my dad, listen, I'm not getting a massive job right now. So let me go to grad school. Let me just go for 1 year. And I ended up going to Syracuse, which Syracuse University here in New York has one of the top communications, media, broadcasting schools in the country. A lot of people come out, a lot of famous people come out of that. And so I was like, all right, let me go there. If I'm not great, but at least it's a good brand to have on my resume. And I went into the communications. Now, liberal studies is a dime a dozen in terms of a degree. Communications is also a dime a dozen, right? A lot of people have communications. It's not, I was focused, but a little bit focused. It wasn't too much focus. But I kind of like the mass media, television, how to sort of influence people. There was a couple of research courses here and there. So I kind of like followed that. So then when I got out my degree, I gravitated towards companies that were in the media space. And then eventually, I'll fast forward it. Eventually I landed at an advertising agency and working because I was doing well at the data stuff. So an advertising agency I did it was called at the time called direct marketing, but it was database marketing advertising. I'm going to put everybody to sleep right now. But anyway, that's kind of where I went into. So no, I did not grow up wanting to be an advertiser. I just kind of followed maybe the path of least resistant. But the key thing to me, just last point on this one, the key thing was I did all this metamorphosis training or changing, if you will, before the internet was a thing. Once I got out of college and I started working right away, and then here comes the internet with digital and social media, like I was able to hit the ground running because I had that mass media background plus that data background, and I was able to slip right into the digital world fairly quickly.
Oh, nice. And I actually like that. And I resonate with that a bit because I feel advertising is kind of core and essential because people think it's just teaching you, oh, here's this thing you don't want to buy, but buy it because I've told you so. But it kind of also teaches you how to speak to people. I'm a man who loves psychology. I'm deep into, since I was young, I've always tried to understand, the cliches you hear in movies. Why is that tree not conscious and I am? Like, what's the difference? What does that mean? So when I grow older, you go on YouTube and you try to understand us as human beings. And the further I go down that path, I realize, I believe to this day that psychology should be a core subject because everything you're going to do, accounting, advertising, coding, whatever it is you're going to do, you're not going to do it for trees or cups or whatever. You're going to do it for people, with people, around people. When you study psychology, they tell you the number one most important thing to us as human beings, as the species Homo sapiens, is first of all ourselves, and secondly, it's other people. So to me, I always looked at it like, shouldn't the first thing you teach a person, the most important thing that is to the person? Like if let's say the most important thing on a car is wheels, a lot of focus should go into wheels, or it's the engine. A lot of focus should go into the engine. So if the most important thing to us as human beings is us human beings, a lot of focus should go into teaching people about human beings, teaching people about us as people, which psychology does really well. And advertising kind of borrows on that. We've all had the cliches. Every social media has psychologists on deck. Every company just try and get you how to play. And I don't know if maybe they teach this in the whole communications and advertising degree you did, but I love that about advertising. People think it's just, here's a bunch of stuff, but it teaches you people how to talk to people, how to communicate with people, and you're breaking down by demographics, which I guess, like you said, bleeds into this whole now being able to do media really well and communicate with students really well, because again, you are learning about people from the get-go. And so when now you're in front of these people trying to teach them something, it kind of becomes easier. And just to go back, you did mention something about before the internet. How was what was let me ask this way. What was the one thing that the internet kind of like changed? Not, I don't want to use crushed, but like in an insane way changed and very fast about the advertising world? Because I'm guessing you are still in that space at the time. What was the like most shocking to you? Like, oh, this thing came and it just changed this for.
Yeah, well, first of all, people do call me a tree because they want me to leave all the time. So there's a dad joke for the day. I think getting back to your question, the big, and lots of things changed with the internet, obviously, e-commerce and all that kind of stuff. But the biggest thing from a media advertising perspective was no longer did consumers or people that consumed content, no longer were we on a schedule or a clock. In other words, when I was your age and younger, I literally rushed home to make sure I was home at least by 8 o'clock so I could watch the newest episode of Friends on Thursday night at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
And it was called Must See TV, and everyone. So it was on a schedule. It was called appointment television. That we didn't even call it appointment television. We didn't realize it, but that's what it was called. It's like saying World War I wasn't called World War I until World War II. It was called the Great War, right? It was called the Great War. So, but once the internet comes around, and then it took some time. It wasn't overnight, but all of a sudden you went from appointment consumption to on-demand consumption. In other words, the consumer, the person, can take the content when they want it. Yeah. It could be time delayed. So this disrupted advertising because, again, pre-internet, if you advertised on primetime television at night between 8 and 11 p.m., again, I'm talking U.S. based. I'm not sure other countries how it work. If you advertise your brand 3-4 commercials a week, 90% of the country saw your ad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had no choice.
They had no choice. It was captured, right? And you can, and that's why it was called mass marketing, because you had all audiences. When the internet comes along and then it becomes fragmented because there's more choices, websites, blah, blah, blah. Now only like 2% sees your ads on mass television anymore, or they call linear now. And you now have to go after niche and small audiences because you're no longer doing mass. Yeah. So it changed from a reach and a content perspective, from a marketing and advertising. Like I said, in other spaces like healthcare or internet, and then e-commerce, there were changes there as well, getting your information. Even car shopping. Instead of going to like 5 dealerships on a weekend to look at a car, if you haven't gone car shopping, not exciting to do. Instead, now people only go like once or twice to a dealership because they've done all the research online first. Yeah. So that's the biggest difference from media standpoint.
You did mention something about like that whole people, like everyone is experiencing those. I don't know where I had this, but this is outside this, but something that removed is human beings experiencing something at once. Like you'd come back to work. I think the last time that happened was like Game of Thrones or something. You go to work and everyone, oh, did you watch this thing? Did you see this thing? That's no longer a thing in this whole, on-demand content, because yes, an episode is coming out every Thursday, but I won't watch it that Thursday. I'll watch it maybe 2 months later. I'll watch it. So that's something that I feel.
Well, it's still, that's interpreted. It still does happen in specific spaces.
Yeah, sports.
Yeah, right. Mainly. This is why LeBron's a multi-billionaire, because everybody sits and watches him
at the same time. Yeah,
sports and breaking news.
Yeah, and maybe politics.
Like breaking news, politics. Although it's hard to put commercials around that stuff, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I would like to shift gears a bit and now get back to, you've left the advertising space, you're now in the teaching space. First of all, what was the aha moment when you saw maybe a student or someone in your audience and you realize, oh, this is something I can actually do, or this is something I love doing,
Yeah, it comes up a lot. People ask me that. So my aha or my passion when teaching is when I'm doing a information or content. Let's say I'm going to make it very boring, like a regression model, which again, look it up, boys and girls, right? But if I'm doing that in class and like I'm going through the concepts and it's not easy to understand if you've never done it before, and I look in the audience or a student and I see in their eyes like they're sort of like, oh, now it's like I've magically transferred knowledge from one to another. That's what gets me excited. I love seeing those small moments of, I wouldn't call them enlightenment, but that kind of, I've now see what you're talking about and it makes sense to me. I'm not just going to regurgitate for it just to do well on a test.
Yes, just to maybe stick to that. Of course, you did school in a different time. You're teaching in a different time. Could you give us an idea of that? Contrast. How was it in your time? What was some things back then maybe that you liked that you would wish still continued? I personally, let's bring back the chalkboard. I like the sound of chalk on board. But anyway, maybe now then your school times versus now school times. Could you?
Yeah, that's a real question. Again, so me being in school, I think everything was very mass produced, right? So everything was like everyone had the same kind of experiences throughout each of the grades. Some people were a little more advanced in terms of their intelligence. They went to different classes, but for the most part, we all experienced the same things together. I think as time goes on, there's more opportunities. I think school now is people are coming from all different backgrounds and experiences and different ages and stuff like that. So you sort of have to sort of like not have any belief that anybody has any kind of baseline at all. And then you realize when you get in class, wow, some of these students are really advanced and some of these other ones are new to this. And so I think it's a challenge. Back in my day, everyone was kind of similar. If you were really smart, talented, and gifted, they put you in a different class. Nowadays, I think everyone's still kind of mixed in because people come from so many different backgrounds. So it makes the classroom more dynamic.
Oh, nice. Has that kind of influenced your teaching style a bit, would you say?
Yeah, it does, because what I try to do, I don't do it all the time, but what I try to do is I try and have my content be modular. In other words, okay, if you got this, some of you got this already, go on and do this part. The other ones, I'll help you more. So it's sort of like you're doing two tracks in the same class, So I change a little bit like that.
Sounds a lot harder than back in the days, because now it's like, and I've had so many testimonies for so many students. The teaching style these days, I don't know, maybe this is just your teaching style, and so many people praise you for this. It's not just in the classroom, you go above and beyond. You're here with me on a podcast, like you go and support the students outside their passions. Do you think those things kind of like help in the space? Is that something that we should push forward? Because of course you'd have on the other end of the spectrum. It's like school. Yesterday, actually, I was watching a clip online and there was this young boy, and the caption was like, he's starting a revolution. I was like, homework should not be done at home. It should be done at school. It should stop with school things, something in that regard. But, it also helps to go outside the school, get to know the student, get to know their aspirations. Like you said, it's people on different levels. Did that exist first, back in the day, first of all? And if it didn't, and it's a new thing, do you think it's a good thing more than, can you give us perspective on that?
I think it's a good question. I think it can go both ways. So back in my day, we did have light and we did have water and all that stuff.
Basics.
Basics. But back in my day, I mean, if a teacher or professor spoke to you outside of class, that was very, very rare. There was, maybe the gym teachers would speak to you, but that's nobody else, right? I do try and find, now me teaching, I try and get to know the person, especially here at Yeshiva University, because your backgrounds are so much interesting. They're different, right? You guys come from different countries, different experiences, different continents and stuff. And I could joke, like some students that are going to start this spring, they've never experienced cold weather in their life, and they're going to get a boatload starting in January. And so I like that. I guess I'm a little bit of an anthropologist in the back of my head, that I like learning about the cultures. So for me, I don't think it's like I'm forcing myself to sort of reach out to the students. Like I'm just a curious person and I get information. I think yeshiva's global persona brings that out.
Yeah, and I like that about yeshiva, as a colleague once mentioned, because when you're outside, I remember for me personally, when we got, before I came to the school, we got like on a call with the yeshiva staff and all this. And I remember someone in that meeting, I still don't remember who, said something in the regard of, oh, we are real people, you come here and see us, it's a real thing. Which, when you're on this side, I don't know if the faculty knows this, most of us who are on the other side, it's hard. There's this, I don't know what to even call it. There's this thing around, it's hard to tell what's real, what's actually legit, and what's actually going to be good for you, you know. But then you get here and realize, oh, because from the outside, you think you're going to be the only African guy in the school, you're going to be the only Arab guy in the school, you know, that happens. So, but when you get to yeshiva and it's like, oh, there's all these other people, there's all these other, and they're all nice and they're all friendly and they're from different walks of life. And then you get to the classes and the professors are also just the same. They're like, oh, hi, we'll take you as you are, we'll teach you on your level, we'll reach that. Personally, as someone who just come to the city and starting to experience it, is something I commend this university for. You talked about a bit about the diversity of the students that you have. Was this something that, since you started teaching, you talked about the, you know, the first NYU things, and was that something you have been experiencing throughout, or is that something you found at Yeshiva?
Yeah, no, it's really funny. So my first class at NYU, the class was diverse, different Southeast Asian, Indian. There were different cultures and stuff like that. So I saw that right away.
Nice.
But it's and this was before WhatsApp. But as soon as you get like a reputation, like you don't realize. So earlier I was going to say the greatest marketing channel ever created is the human being. Nice. You know, television, radio, but human beings are great because of word to mouth, word of mouth is the most powerful recommendation factor, right?
Nice.
So once I started teaching, and I guess I got a decent reputation, the students all would tell, oh, take this one, take that, don't take this one. And so my class over time, over like 3 or 4 years, became very homogeneous. In other words, it was all the same people, like all people from Asia. You know, that was it. There was no, so I started off with diversity, and then I ended up, the class became very, very similar. But when coming to Yeshiva, because the COVID prevented a lot of students from coming here with consulates being closed and visas and all that stuff. It was a slow drip, but all of a sudden then the different countries started bringing that diversity out again. There's one point I want to make you. So it's interesting that, as opposed to like being a college professor in Uganda, in which you may have similar experiences with the students, being a professor from the US, having students from Uganda, Zimbabwe, Zambia, etc. One, they're different backgrounds growing up. But number two is the students yourself got up off your you-know-what and left your country to come here.
Yeah.
That's an incredible trait and personality that you guys have. I would never do that. I would never do that. So I'm like in awe of you guys for wanting to actually uproot yourself. Now, let's be fair here. You're coming to New York City. You're not going to someplace, you know, in the Midwest. Of which, no offense to the Midwest, but you come to New York City. So there's fun stuff to do here. But I give you guys a lot of credit. So I'm in awe of the students from that standpoint. That you guys are a different personality, different type A, if you will. And that makes the classroom also kind of exciting.
Yeah, I actually love that. Recently, I watched the video today as well. I sent a video to my friend a few weeks ago, telling them it explains why the people who get here have a certain drive. Because by the time you actually get here, you are a certain type of person. You are a certain type of character. There's a certain drive you have. There's a certain... So which kind of, I think, also makes the classes interesting, because these are like the people who had the guts. So in whatever realm, whatever field, whatever personality, whatever character, whatever thing they're good at, there's like a top 1% of that thing that they are in. The mere fact that they are here, they are a top 1% of whatever thing they are, whatever character they are. So that kind of makes the classroom a bit more interesting.
Right. See, you've ruined my perception of Uganda. I think everyone's smart and amazing like you. That's what I think everybody is. When I go there, that may not be the case.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because you get this conglomerate, this collection of people who, first of all, they're driven differently. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. Thank you for this. This is amazing. As wind up, I want now to get into the after. You've been teaching for about 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. You've done advertising for 25 years. Let's talk projects that you're interested in, dreams, aspirations. What's the next thing that's getting you out of bed?
That's interesting. So yeah, and I'm constantly like fighting myself with this because I'm in my mid 50s, and when I remember people in their mid 50s, they were retired and ready to sit in a rocking chair and not do anything the rest of their lives. So I fight myself because I don't feel like that's where I want to go. So I think just for the next, let's say 5-10 years, my passion is going to be in education and really helping the next generation adapt to what the world is bringing. Because let's face it, we need the young people to fix what's going on in this world. We need a lot of help, And so I think my passion is still going to be, pouring myself into people, giving back as well as learning, and then how can I help advance what people want to do. So I think I'm in my space. I don't think I have I'm not Elon Musk. I don't want to build spaceships to Mars. That's not what mine's going to drive me. I think it's that giving back, playing it forward. I think I'm just going to keep on expanding on that.
Nice. I like that, paying it forward. You've mentioned a lot of gems here. My favorite I'm going to take away from this is the greatest marketing tool is the human being.
Channel, greatest marketing channel.
My channel is the human being. I really love that. On that same note, any special inspirations, advice that you'd give to, first of all, the students, the faculty that's listening, professors, normal people in the advertising space? Anything that you'd personally like to tell them, and something that you feel is dear to you and you feel that people out there should know this?
Yeah. So like I said, I be leery of taking all advice from someone a generation older than you, because life experiences are totally different. Also, don't put all your eggs in one basket and have just one, what you would say, a mentor or something. Have several. One might be more for finance. One might be more for family orientation. One might be more for career. In other words, people have different skills and talents, and you should seek out yourself different people to help mentor you, because not one or two person is going to help you get there. And at the end of the day, even if you're just listening to stuff, it still takes an effect, like osmosis. It gets into your brain, you kind of hear it, and it shapes you going forward, even though it may not be a specific thing. Like if I said, hey, when you have children, open up a 529. Okay, fine. That's easy to do. But what are good financial steps? How should I, if I spend $100, should I save $100? Like have that kind of I'm getting too off topic here, but seek advice from many mentors, not just one.
Nice. I love that. It's actually contrary to what most of us have been told. It's like get one mentor and stick to him, and and kind of makes sense, because no one person can know it all, So again, I really love that. Have many people have different, especially in this day and age where it's like, I had this recently. We've never been bombarded with this much information as a species ever in our lives. So you really need to be careful what
and disinformation.
So thank you, Joe. This has been amazing. Now I'd like to get to my favorite section, the fire round questions. These are just random questions that I dream up when I'm going about my day. They have nothing to do with anything. Just I have 5 of them today.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Question number 1. Who's the most famous Joe that you're a fan of or have met in real life or would like to meet?
Most famous show, probably just because I watch. I'm a big sports fan. Probably Joe DiMaggio. Just the baseball player. Joe DiMaggio. I never met him, but saw a lot of his film and stuff like that. And I just have it's probably the first person I remember with the same name as me.
Oh, nice. Okay, second question. This is in 2 parts. How many languages do you speak?
I say I speak 2, English and New York.
Well, the second one is going to be easy. What language are your thoughts in? So hopefully not New York.
Not New York. English. Not the Queen's English, American English.
The third one, the last song you sang karaoke to out loud or at a hangout place.
Oh God. I think it was like a One Direction song.
What?
Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
There you have, ladies and gentlemen, a One Direction fan.
Yes.
My fourth question: a child, you know, from like childhood, we all have those TV shows that like were all over the place. So, what childhood TV show do you still remember today? Whose opening theme song or soundtrack you can still sing off head today?
Okay,
I'll start you off this one. I can still probably sing the Go-Go Power Rangers theme song. So, which one is it for you?
yeah, I'm not gonna sing the song, but I do know my favorite. It was a show back in late 70s, early 80s when I was watching TV too much. It's called Three's Company.
Nice.
It was a sitcom, and it was always like misunderstanding at the end of the day. That was probably my favorite show growing up.
Oh, nice. And the final question, this is just for my own curiosity. I've heard of Stillwater. You've heard of Stillwater?
Stillwater?
Yeah.
No.
There's like this brand, it's called Stillwater. I don't know if it's a brand or it's the water that's still.
Okay. STEEL?
STILL.
Oh, steel. Okay, steel. Okay.
Yeah. So I was wondering, is it, let me even first look that up.
Okay.
Is it still water, like stay still, or it's like, hey, it's not yet ice, it's still water?
I like the second one better. Yeah.
Okay. And the final question was the first thing you looked at today morning when you woke up.
Unfortunately, my phone.
Oh,
Probably my phone. I know it's terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah, trust me. We've been. I've personally also been battling with that. And as a person who's interested in psychology, you watch all these things and they tell you how all things. But though, to their credit, I have noticed that the days when the phone is the last thing I've looked at for like 5 days straight, the next mornings I'm usually feeling a bit weird versus the days. If I do, let's say, look at my phone as the last thing for 4 days straight, and then on the fifth day, the last thing I look at is like maybe a book, and then in the morning kind of feels different, you know. And the one that always stands out to me is your brain has so many resources, first of all. So you do know the dopamine, whatever the phone is trying to do. So I never want to tire myself out in the morning. That's why I try as much not to look at my phone in the morning. Not because phone addiction or anything, but because I don't want to get tired by midday.
Yeah, I should wear those blinders on my eyes, sleep blinders.
Yeah. So I thank you, Joseph. This has been an amazing talk. Thank you for doing this with me. And to everyone listening, if you need to find him, I don't know if you mind giving us socials. You don't have to, but he's a professor here at Yeshiva. The man has seen it all, done it all, from advertising to teaching, and is now hopefully going to serve the world with his teaching methods, because I can testify they are things most professors should adapt. Thank you for this.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Now, I want to do one more.
Sure.